Hello, this is Joe Wischlater, Wischlaters Incorporated, and in this video tutorial we'll be going over laying out a center pivot in a field and then exporting that data to a Trimble display to go flag out those paths and pivot points of a center pivot. So to start with, we'll open up Trimble Ag Software, the desktop version, and I've got a field boundary imported that was mapped out with one of our Trimble displays. So let's just kind of use the instance that we're going to go basically from this boundary line here to this boundary line here, and we're going to find the pivot point here and then do basically a hemisphere layout. So I'll first use my measuring tool. Click the measure tool at the top, and I'll zoom in as close to the field boundary as I can that was collected earlier. So if I click there, I can now use the roller ball on my mouse and go over. I'm going to try to make this horizontal to get a most accurate reading as I can. So I'll come over here and then come into the boundary. Now if you look at the far bottom left hand corner, this is 2614, so 2,614 feet wide. So I'll right click and just finish there. And so take 2614, divide that in half, gives us 1307. So from this boundary, from this edge of the western boundary to the middle is 1307 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on field 1, left click on add layer, and I'll create line features. So then I'll come in, kind of zoom into the area that I want, and I'm going to basically come straight down from this line along the southern boundary to draw my first point of the line. So I'll click the line tool, and again I'm just going to take my mouse, come straight down, and left click. And so now again, if you look at the bottom right hand corner, we can see a distance. So there's 700 feet. And we need to go over to 1307. So I went past it a little bit. I'll come in. Once I get in the neighborhood of 1307, I'll zoom in even more to make it a more accurate reading. So 1309, there's 1307. So I'm going to left click one time and drop a point, and then just kind of come north so I can see that intersection point. So I'll right click and hit finish. And so this point right there is what we're looking for. So if I come up and grab my select tool, and at this point in time I'm going to hit save and close, I'm going to right click right at the intersection of kind of where that line turns, because that's going to be our pivot point. That's going to be the pivot location. Now let's say, for instance, here's the boundary. If your pivot needs to come up 10 feet, like actually let's go back into the setting mode. Let's say, for instance, my pivot's going to come up off this field boundary 20 feet to the center of the pivot. So I'll just use my my line tool from this point, and as I draw basically north, and I can get my lines squared up to go north, and I can see 14.6.8. So I'll go up till I see 20 feet. And actually I can use my arrow key on my keyboard to move up some. So I'll zoom in, and let's get to 20 feet. So there's 20 feet. Now left click and right click and hit finish. So here is basically 1307 over and 20 feet up. So that's going to be my pivot location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to register that location. So if I click on my select tool and bring my cursor to that point and right click, and I'll hit register location. I'm going to give it a name pivot. And if you've done this process multiple times, you're going to delete any old reference points in there that we're not using. So I'll call it pivot, and here's my latitude and longitude of that pivot point. So I'll say OK. I can hit save and close to this. So now what I'm going to do, I can't draw a circle with my line tool, but I can an area tool. So if I right click on field 1, left click on add layer, I'll just create a polygon or area layer. I'm not really worried about the name for right now. Now I'm going to use for instance, because I'm not a center pivot guy, I'm just going to say each tower length is 250 feet long. So we're going to put these in 250 foot long rings. So from this point, I'm going to pull up this new layer I just created, and I'll go in the pencil mode to edit this layer. And in the include polygon tool, you can hit the drop down. There's a rectangle, circle radius, circle diameter, or a polygon. We're going to use the circle radius tool. So I could just click here, but just be consistent. If I hit the C on my keyboard, it pulls up those registered coordinates. So if I select pivot, I can say OK to that, and now this radius starts at that pivot point. So what we'll do is we'll come over until we see 250 feet. So once I get kind of close, I'll zoom in. Again, you want to make this as accurate as possible, so the closer you zoom in, the more accurate that will be. So get into 250. And again, if you're not seeing at the very bottom right hand corner, you'll see the radius. So there, we clicked on that. Now I'm going to do it again. So I'm just going to hit my C button on my keyboard again as a registered point, and I'll choose that pivot point. And now we're going to go out to 500 feet. So again, I'll zoom in as close as I can to make that as accurate as possible. So there, we're at 500 feet, and click again. And I'll hit the C button again. And again, each time I'm hitting the C button, I'm choosing my pivot location, so I'm at that same center location. This time we'll go to 750 feet. I need to zoom in closer so it's easier. There we go. I'll hit my C button again to go out to my 1,000-foot ring. Again, once you get close, zoom in. Once you hit 1,000 feet, it stops giving you that decimal tenth, so it's going to round to the nearest foot. But once you get to 1,000, like if it says 1,000 on the screen, it'll make it at 1,000 feet. Okay, so I'll zoom out. We shouldn't have enough room to do one more in here. So 1,250 will be our last tower. Zoom in a little more and get down to 1,250. Click it. And so there we have all of our rings where the tower is going to go. So let's say we want to set one more line for where the spray is going to end. I'll hit my C button again, and I don't know what this dimension is. Let's say it's another 65 feet. So if we're at 1,250, that'll take us to 1,315. So we'll do one last radius of 1,315. And there we go. So if I zoom out, I can see all of our rings and where we're going to basically overspray on the north. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight all these polygons we made and right click and hit copy. I'll go ahead and hit save and close for now. And actually I'm done with this layer, so I can remove it from view. But I'm going to go back to my feature lines layer, and I'll hit the pencil button, and as I paste these in here, it's going to turn them into lines. So I hit paste addition, and now I have a bunch of lines here. If I want, I can leave these whole circles here if I wanted to. If I want to trim them off outside the boundary, I'll just use the cut line tool, and just kind of do a rough cut. Let's kind of draw it along the road. And now I can delete any point or any lines I don't want. So as I draw this box here, it's going to get those ones I cut off. It's going to do those first initial ones I was drawing and get rid of all those just to clean up everything we don't need. Now I can hit save and close. The last thing we need to do is we need to actually drop a point, which will be our pivot location. So on the field, I'm going to right click field, add layer, and I hit create point features. All of these layers down here are specific to Trimble displays. So if I hit create point features, I'll hit this define points, and instead of wondering where it's at, all I have to do is hit the C button on my keyboard to bring up registered coordinates and choose that same pivot. And so now this point here has the same radius point of all the lines. So they're all going to line up. So I'll hit save and close to that. And I'll zoom to layer, and here's our map with all of our rings. You can kind of see where they intersect the boundary. If there was a ditch through here and we had to put bridges in, we can now guide to these lines with one of the GFX 750 displays. The GFX 750 display comes in a wide variety of accuracy, from within a couple feet all the way up to within an inch, depending on your price level and standards you want to go to. So now we're ready to send this stuff out to a display. So I'll just hit the double arrow to remove everything from view. And I'll go to File, Write Job Data. I'm going to send it out to the Trimble GFX 750, so I'll choose the 750 display. This is my drive location that my thumb drive is plugged into, and I'll click Options, just to verify which field I'm sending out. And I just want to make sure I'll uncheck user info and only choose the field I'm working with. So it's the Schlater's Incorporated client, and I was using a 2019 GPS School Farm and field 1. So we'll say OK to that. I'll say OK to this, and it's writing those jobs out to the thumb drive. And it's asked me, do I want to clear all the stuff on my thumb drive? No, I'm not going to worry about that. And now the job's sent out. So now we're going to go to the display. Okay, so we're back at the display. You see I've got TeamViewer hooked up so we can record the session on the GFX 750. But I'll go ahead and open up the Precision IQ app by clicking on the Precision IQ app. And the main home screen, this is what will normally pop up. Oops, hit a button by mistake. Okay, so this is your main home screen that'll pop up, and I need to go to Data Transfer to transfer the data off the USB drive onto our display. And so we'll click on the USB side, I'll click the arrow by fields, and I can see field 1, so I'll click field 1 and copy field 1 over to our display. Transfer is successful. So I'll hit the back arrow beside data transfer to go back to the home screen. And now I need to select this field. So as I select the field, I can hit the field 1 is the one I want to use. So it's selecting that field, and I'll hit back. And before I start, I'm going to go to the field manager screen, which is kind of the picture of the field with the gear over on the left hand side. And if I go to guidance patterns, there's one line set in there, so I can see all those lines in there, but I can click line set, and if I hit activate to the pattern, I can now guide to these lines. So the light bar guidance will guide to these lines. So now we can go back to our home screen, and actually I can just hit the green run guy at the top left to go into the field. So as we come in here, these lines that we drew are now all active guidance lines. So I can just use the simulator to kind of start driving us around. Let me steer around here. And whichever line you're closest to, it's going to guide you to. So if you're trying to set bridges over a ditch, you can use this guidance pattern to just drive along the ditch, and whenever it intersects one of the lines, it'll guide you to that line. So as you drive around the field, you can see those points there. Let's also drive back to the along the boundary. We'll drive to that pivot point to basically identify that pivot location. So while we're going through here, we have multiple views we can look at. If I tap on the vehicle, I can hit this yellow pointer to go into kind of a perspective view. So as we see this perspective view, we can see each line where each tower path will be, as well as that pivot point in the middle. So we can guide to that, get lined up over top of that pivot point to set that pivot location as well. So here's how you can use the GFX 750 for laying out center pivots. Hope you guys found this beneficial, and if you have any questions, certainly look us up at schlatersinc.com or give us a call at 219-567-9158. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.